Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to another episode of Electric Air Mobility.news. My name is Nicholas Zart, and today we're concluding the two-part series of the article, What are vertiports and how will they change the way that we move? So in part one, what we saw before, we talked about what are vertiports in general terms, basically. And by now you should be familiar with words like vertistop, very short, on and off, probably no energy in the beginning, just a shelter. And then vertiport, a little bit bigger. Instead of one vertipad, maybe two, three, five vertipads. And of course, vertihub, once we get to that point further down the road in a few years from now, these will be more like what we consider airports to be. My name is Nicholas Zart, and I'm the founder behind Electric Air Mobility. I've been acting as a consultant and a journalist in electric mobility for almost 20 years now, 17 of which really professionally. And somewhere in 2014, about a decade ago, I focused solely on aviation, electric aviation. And there's a great story about how advanced air mobility came about, and I always thought, no, it should be electric air mobility because that's what we do after all. Electric Air Mobility LLC is a consulting firm, and what we do is we conceptualize or we help cities, municipalities, airports, businesses conceptualize what vertiports are and design an ecosystem around them, basically the infrastructure, the energy, and everything that goes around into making a string of vertiports. And unlike other vertiport companies out there, we actually don't sell our product. We're not going to push you with our solution, but instead we do look at all the solutions out there, and we've partnered with some very well established global OEMs and a few interesting startups with fantastic systems that really add to the ecosystem. So we're really one of the rare companies out there that can give you a very good holistic view of what the market is like, but specifically give you many solutions to your particular vertiport operation. So we don't just offer one solution, we offer hopefully three solutions for every single strategic pillars of what vertiports are. Of course, if you've been listening to the first part, you already know what a vertiport looks like, and also you understand now the energy requirement behind that, mainly electricity, hydrogen, and of course some of the sustainable aviation fuels that we will have. One thing we didn't really talk too much about in the article, and I need to write that now, is really the storage solution is very important. We did talk a little bit about it in the other video, but vertiports and vertihubs will have energy storage, and that looks like battery energy storage and hydrogen storage, at least for the most part, until we come up with something that we don't know of yet. And by the way, that will happen, because one of the things that we are following with a lot of excitement is the renewal interest and developments in the nuclear energy. And if you have been following small modular reactors, these are nuclear reactors that have been simplified and have shrunk down to not only be built in record time, but most of the time to use a safer type of nuclear energy, mostly molten salts. And that means that at some point or another, these little reactors could power a city to even a neighborhood. And this is where we're looking at that as a potential solution for our energy needs. So today, we're going to talk a little bit more about terminals and terminal design. And of course, when we think of terminal designs, we think of airports. And usually that sort of goes into two directions, right? The gigantic airports where you end up walking for hours, you don't really know where you are, you have to look up everywhere, you have to ask, you have to walk, you have to be on the sidewalk, you have to, oh my lord. And then you have the quaint little airports like the airport where I'm here, Savannah, Georgia, where it's just one straight line. And I happen to almost know everybody at the TSA, and we kind of joke and laugh within safety, right? But that's usually how we see terminal designs. Well, terminal designs for vertiports will share some of that, but will also innovate in different ways. If you understand the business model of an airport and even a heliport, although there are not a lot of commercial heliports, at least in the U.S., airports are really designed to do two things: to make you go from one place to your gate, or from the entrance to your gate, but also to attract you to spend money. You might not know this, but one of the biggest revenue streams for airports is, can you figure it out? Parking, of course. That's why parking is so expensive. And that's why a lot of airports fight tooth and nail public transportation coming to the airport. That's why the metro at the LAX airport, it took 30, 40 years to get to 30 years to get to finally coming close to the airport. Seriously, guys, come on, make it easy on everyone. Well, with vertiports, we hope to change all of that. We hope to place our vertiports in strategic places where it's close to highways, it's close to public transportation, because after all, we're not doing the long haul, we're doing the short hops. So next to a railway station, next to a bus stop, and of course, there will be parking, but parking is going to be seen more as a way to recharge your EVs than anything else. So the design that we focused on, especially electric air mobility, is one that prioritizes ease and flow. We want people to be able to go in and out as quickly and effortlessly as possible, in the most pleasing way possible, in the most natural way possible. But here's the fun part. We also want them to stop when they have time, to stop and pick up a book, pick up a sandwich, pick up a coffee or a tea. So we're making sure that without being obtrusive or in your face, you have a choice to stop and pick up something. And what we would really love to do is for the local food industry, the local entertainment industry, anything that is local to be represented there. And I've got a great example of that, by the way. If you fly into Long Beach, California, check out the vendors inside the airport. First of all, the new airport, or the modernized airport, is really beautiful the way it was done. It's fantastic. But what's more important is you can get your favorite stuff there directly. I'm talking about Sheldrick Roastery. Yum, yum, yum. Real good coffee. And everything that you would find in Long Beach. Why do I know this? I used to live there. There you go. So it's really, we're revamping airport terminal design. We're making sure that it is at the very lowest levels of a vertiport, a place that's efficient enough to go through, of course, have your TSA security checks and everything, but have all sorts of things to make sure that you are getting on the right aircraft with the right weight. And of course, that opens up another topic which we'll talk about later, is how important it is to have drones at your vertiport operation. So that will be that when it comes to terminals. Now, another important part of a vertiport is, where do they land? Where do they take off? So if with helicopters we talk about helipads, if at airports we talk about runways, at vertiports we talk about vertipads, virtually vertipads. That's where the aircraft will take off and land. So in this industry segment, we really have two types of vertipads at the moment. Mostly static vertipads. That means, a slab of concrete with a sticky, grippy surface, so that if there's wind, if there's icy condition, wet condition, the aircraft stays put. And most of the time they're heavy enough to do that, but we just want to make sure that that will happen. But also with, good water drainage. And in some cases, specifically if we are in the northern hemispheres where we have freezing temperatures and of course ice, a de-icing solution. But these vertipads need to have some sort of protection from debris, right? When you're taking off, we don't want that debris to go flying off in your car that's parked in one direction, or the terminal in the other direction. And then there's another type of vertipad that we're all working on, and these are called the smart vertipads. Now, what these guys do is basically they have sensors on the vertipad. So think about the aircraft is coming and landing. Actually, hang on a second. Where is my little? It's nowhere near where I can reach it. But think of the aircraft is coming down and it's landing on the vertipad. But on the vertipad right here, you've got sensors, and these sensors are communicating with the aircraft. And what they will tell us is the state of operation of the aircraft, how much electricity or fuel it has, its weight, everything that you can think of. And of course, as technology progresses, more and more and more and more, so that we have a sort of a pre-flight checklist of the aircraft. Obviously, this will help drive down the cost of insurance, because we will know a heck of a lot more. And think that all of this goes right to the very end of our segment, when we'll talk about how do we make sense of all that data. So between these two types of vertipads, we, of course, at Electric Air Mobility work with companies that design both. On the terminal side of things, I'm really happy to say that we work with my favorite architecture firm in the advanced air mobility world, and that's PSNS. And you know them because if you've been reading our articles or if you've been watching our videos, we use a lot of their pictures. It was the original architecture firm that worked with Uber Elevate in 2017, and these guys are top-notch, fantastic folks who have continued to develop and to learn more about the industry and develop more solutions around that. So we're extremely very happy to be able to work with these guys. So we talked about obviously how will Vertiport make sense of all of this data. And this is something we don't always think about when we think of airports. We think of runways, we think of terminals, we think of parking lots, we think of people moving in and out. But there's a lot that goes on behind the infrastructure side of things that makes this, the experience more or less seamless depending on what airport you're in, right? So vertiports, we want to stress the importance of this, and we've been saying this for years, that vertiports are much more than a mobility hub. It's also an energy hub. It's a data hub. We need to know basically what aircraft is coming from where, carrying whom, what is their profile, who are they associated with, what airlines are they flying, what kind of cars do they have. All of this we need to know, the state of the aircraft, what company, what is its capacity, what is its operational envelope, and how much energy does it have, how much energy will it need to have. With this we can kind of draw an idea of how much energy we will need for the following day when we expect a certain amount of traffic and of course a certain amount of electricity and hydrogen to cater to all of this traffic, right? On top of that, this will also help us understand how much food and drinks and amenities in general do we need to carry on board. What are the local specialties that we want to have represented at these vertiports, given the fact that we have so many travelers a day and a certain proportion of them will stop long enough to actually look at this. Some of them will be rushing home, want to just grab something to eat for later, so on and so forth. So we have to make sense of all of that. Tie into now the security aspect of it. Yes, just like we have no-fly people on the list, well, we'll have the same thing with terminals inside of our terminals. And that means that our terminals are designed not only to help passenger flow right through, but also to obviously have staff, have enough room for them, but to have security rooms and to have our TSA officers and other security officers around the world safe in a place where they can actually monitor traffic, know who's coming in, and all of that good stuff and everything. So all of this, including now an even more important thing, and this is also to give you an idea of how complicated vertiports are and how much work and development has gone into them up until now, pretty much unbeknownst to most of you guys, because you always hear about the aircraft, you don't hear about the infrastructure side of things. Right now, we have a sort of an ATM system for aircraft, and even that is extremely complicated. We have something that makes sense, that takes over when they're in high altitude cruising. We have something that talks to them when they are on the descent. They have something that is, very close proximity to the airport, to the landing part, and then they have something that once they're on the ground, and of course, tons of other complexities on top of all that. Well, we will have to work with these systems, but our systems are going to be probably fairly similar to that, but they will add layers of API so that we can work all together on top of that. So we'll have what we call ATM, and that's the human, air traffic passengers. Those are the eVTOL traffic passengers that we have to know where they're coming from, where they are, and making sure there's no conflict in the air. But we'll also have what we call UTM or USV traffic management systems, and that's for the drones. And the drones are going to be an important part of a vertiport. No vertiport, at least as far as we're concerned, no vertiport can be functional without a drone service. It's just doesn't make a lot of sense. And although technology can do some of what drones can do, drones will basically do a lot of the extra work. They'll be the eyes in the sky, they'll be the brains in the sky, and that's going to be very important because they will monitor the airspace. They not only will carry cargo and help us with maybe oversized, overweight luggages, but they will also figure out what's going on. And even though we've got some fantastic companies that work on micro weathers and companies that can detect obstacles 4 miles away from where we are, we still want to make sure that we have something in the air that sees what's going on. And these drones are going to play such a crucial role because they will not just do one thing, they'll do a lot of different things. Taking into consideration, we've got busy highways around us, they'll be able to give us real-time data on traffic patterns. You know, there's an accident here, there's a slowdown here, and that goes into your Waze, that goes into your driving app and things like that. But they'd also work with law enforcement, they'll work with fire prevention, they'll work with ambulance systems. So we have to make all of this mesh, and it is being done. We work with two fantastic companies in this domain, and they have absolutely amazing, brilliant system on top of everything else that's even behind that. But if I started to go into details, we'd be here for 3 hours, and I have a feeling not all of you would actually stand that long. So suffice it to say that drones are an important part of what we call traffic management, and all of this now has to be rationalized at the vertiport level, and now we call this vertiport management system, or VMS. And that really is a way to automate a lot of what we do, a lot of the traffic, and determine how much energy we need for the next day, how much food and drinks we need for the next day, what aircraft will be up in the air, and everything around that, staffing, security, safety, you name it. So obviously all of this means a lot of computing power. All of this means using a backbone such as AWS, but it also means, obviously, you guessed it, AI. AI is going to play a role in it. Now, I just saw a great meme on Facebook that pretty much pinpointed it really well. I don't want AI to think for me. In fact, I don't want AI to do anything but do my laundry and give me time enough to take care of what I want to do in life, like arts, and enjoy life. And I like that because that's exactly how we look at AI. We're very lucky that one of my closest friend is at the head of an AI, of a Gen AI company that was spun off from Intel. I'll let you figure out which one it is. And so I always have great discussions with him about what AI is and what AI isn't. And so these discussions lead into, well, this is what we need from AI in the advanced air mobility industry. We really wanted for its adapting to traffic patterns, to figure out what is the most case scenario, to calculate how much energy we will need. So we wanted to do the heavy duty data crunching work, which will not obviously happen on the vertiport side of things, but will definitely be stored at least partially on the vertiport side of things, so that if there's any problem, the backbone is not available, there's still a lot of ways to make that data available and to make it work there. So it's really interesting. I have an IT background, so for me, I kind of geek out on that portion of the equation. And it's interesting to see what we're doing with AI and how much we want to take AI, and where I kind of draw the line and say, no, that's not really needed. But yes, we will use AI for facial recognition. We will use AI for these kind of things. But there are some things that I'm not yet sure we'll cross that line, and maybe we'll cross it once we see more case scenarios out there. So that takes care of the ecosystem, and that takes care of most of everything except for one thing. Actually, two things, but this one thing is important, is where do we place a vertiport? And that question really relies on where do we place a vertiport within a network of vertiports. And within that network of vertiport, there's another important component, is where will the MRO be, the maintenance, repair, and overhaul system. Ideally, you want to put it in the middle. But in some cases, some of the vertiport networks that we're working on, there is no central place where we can actually put a vertiport. It has to be on one end or the other, sometimes far away from it. So lots of logistics around getting the aircraft as quickly and as efficiently as possible to this MRO. We've got more or less the training already figured out. We know how to train people. We know how to train people from conventional aviation MROs to AAM MROs, and that's very interesting to work with. The last question is, and maybe one last word about strategic locations of vertiports within a vertiport network is the landscape, the topography, where is the closest substation. All of these things are taken into consideration. Is there a renewable energy field somewhere that we can tap into? Is the vertiport big enough to include it within its parameters. So those are also, of course, some of the criteria that we go through, and we have a checklist of all of these. And thankfully, they're handled by GIS companies that really do that very, very well. That we are very lucky to partner with, and we've got two great ones when it comes to that. So now we've kind of looked at almost everything, and yes, it's a bird's eye view. It's way more complicated than that, but hey, that's the reason why we exist, and not almost everyone can do a vertiport out there. Now there is the meaning of all of this, right? So why do we want to do vertiports? Why do we want to have electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft? Why do we want to have electric airplanes? Well, the solution is very simple. Two reasons. First of all, road congestion. I don't know about you, but I used to own Alfa Romeos, old Alfa Romeos from the 60s and 70s, and I love driving them. No more. Absolutely no more. It's not fun driving them. First of all, I'm surrounded with big SUVs and pickup trucks. I know that if one of them runs over me, virtually, they will run over me. So, not a lot of fun. Second of all, I can't drive fast. I can't drive fast anywhere, so I have to take it on a track. So then I really need just a special track day car. So that's not a lot of fun. There's a lot of congestion. And if I want to go somewhere, I'm going to have to hit a lot of traffic lights. I'm going to have to turn left, turn right. And of course, stop and start is absolutely horrible on cars. And EVs, of course, do much better with stop and go traffic, but aviation is more or less a straight line, or actually a curved line. It goes there more efficiently in terms of the actual trajectory, right? Trajectory. But also another thing that I think a lot of people don't understand and don't know to this day is that aviation is much more efficient than driving. So by now, a lot of people raise their eyebrows and go, "You're crazy, yada yada yada." But no, I'm not crazy, because here's why. And this is very simple to understand. Cars ride on, guess what? Tires. They're made out of rubber. That's a spongy, sticky component so that the car stays on the road. And in order to stay well on the road, it uses this rubber compound with another similar compound, which is tarmac. So there's a lot of friction there. And that's why cars notoriously are not the most efficient modes of transportation. In fact, I would gather that most people don't know that only a third of your gasoline tank moves the car forward. 2/3 is lost in heat and friction. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. However, an aircraft is much more efficient. And yes, they are designed to, well, when we think of, Airbus 320 family and 737 families, these guys are, I mean, all of them, they're really tweaked to fly at 35 to 45,000 feet, right? Where they only use about a third, maybe 30% of their engine's capacity, and there they are very efficient. In fact, miles per gallon, they way more efficient than a regular car. In fact, I was just looking at an aircraft called Synergy Prime that is able to fly 200 kilometers per hour. That's 125 miles per hour with 5 people, sipping 40 miles per gallon. You can't do that with a car, period. So aviation is an efficient means of mobility. Electric aviation also means that it's not only more efficient than internal combustion engines, whether we talk about turbines or pistons, it's more efficient, it's quieter, and if done well, meaning we use renewable energy, has almost the smallest carbon footprint available. Now, it also means that with a lot of these aircraft, we're able to take off much later and earlier in the daytime because they make less noise. There are wonderful aircraft right now with electric drivetrains so that they can just taxi onto the runway and then take off with their propeller using only electricity after closing time for regular airplanes. Now, if you've actually been reading about eVTOLs, they are quieter than helicopters, and that's explained because a big rotor, the propagation of the noise is really horizontal, whereas a propeller is more like a funnel. It's vertical, so the noise goes up and down, so you don't hear it nearly as well. And I saw both Archer's original, what was it, the Maker, fly, and I saw also Joby's S4 fly, and yeah, you hear it for the first 100 feet, and it's like a whiz or a whirl, but nothing like a helicopter. In fact, we heard an helicopter when it was up in the air. That's all you could hear was the helicopter, right? So aviation is a safe way to travel, and in fact, replacing smaller propeller aircraft for 737s and A320 is not really efficient. These airplanes are meant to fly for a few hours. That's really when they start to make sense, even on an emission carbon footprint. But electric aviation, such as what we do, are a much greater benefit overall compared to cars. So we are sort of removing congestions away from the streets. We're removing a lot of the pollution away from the street in an efficient way. So this is what we're doing. This is what electric air mobility is doing. I always get it wrong. It's this way. This is what electric air mobility does. I mean, I've been doing this for about 20 years, so I know a thing or two about electric mobility. And what I've seen so far is that the judicial use of electric air mobility with renewable energy is really 2/3 of the way there. Can you guess what the last third is? This is the biggest problem that everyone has, not just us. Everyone, even in the fossil fuel industry, is manufacturing. As soon as we can get to efficient manufacturing that is clean, sustainable, and renewable, then we're scot-free. And for that to happen, we kind of have to wean ourselves from the traditional business model. We can do better. We are doing better. We hope you've enjoyed this video. We hope you will like it, share, subscribe, and please leave your comments so that we know what you think. And we'll talk to you soon. I forgot what the next topic is, but hopefully it'll be interesting. We'll talk to you later. Thank you. Bye-bye.